My name is Greg Weaver, and this is ENG4E, Grade 12 Workplace English. I'd like to welcome everyone listening across the North today at Home Your Learning Center on Bell Express View. To call and join our class, you can call 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017 or 2983 in the Sioux Lookout, Lac Seul, or Dryden area. I was supposed to be away today, but I am broadcasting live from our studio today. My trip to Becanton has been canceled last minute, and so it has been rescheduled for sometime next week, and I'll let you know when that's going to be close to that date. So we're going to pick up where we left off on Thursday, which is the very end of lesson number 5. So we spent all of Wednesday's class reading through an article called Learning to Work Safely. So we're going to pick up where we left off, which is at page 49 of Unit 1, Lesson 5. So it says, this article is written in essay style, has a statement that clearly indicates the purpose of the article. It's called the thesis statement. The thesis article is the statement that's last in the first paragraph. People who want to make people aware that workplaces can be dangerous. Like an essay, the article develops its thesis through many different models. For example, the following. So look at those in a second. Before we look at that, I think I want to remind you of, before we read this article, we did, and you're going to see some of my markings when I did pre-record the class on Friday. So we had look at these statements that's up on page 43. So look at the different statements, looking at how accurate are they. So our first one we looked at the statement, young people between the age of 12 and 24 are at the highest risk of being hurt or killed on the job. And here before we said we disagree with that. That doesn't seem possible. On the right-hand side, you see it's highlighted in that light teal blue. And looking at that, what that is whether you agree or disagree with that after you've read the article. So we look at that, we find that in the very first, second page, we see that it says that people between age of 12 and 24 are at the highest of being hurt or killed. So we actually agree. So we agree with that. So our prediction was incorrect with that, which is completely fine. It's fine to be wrong. Our next one said you have the right to refuse work that you think is unsafe. Before we read it, we said, nah, you can't do that. Well, actually, you do. That is one of the fundamental rights you have as a worker in Ontario, is you have the right to refuse to do any work that you believe is unsafe or work you have been trained for. It's a really important right to know and to think about. And always keep that in mind as you start go through your career as an employee. The third one says people who work in the fast food industry are at a low risk of being hurt or killed on the job. So we disagree with that. We said, now there's a pretty good chance you can be hurt doing that. And we're correct there. It is disagree. They are at a very high risk of being killed, hurt, or otherwise injured on the job. And our last one says it's the employer's responsibility to train workers in safety procedures. And that turned out to be true. So we agree with that before we read the article, and we still agree with it at the end of the article as well. So we went through the whole article, and then we're going to write down to the thesis statement. The thesis statement is at the very beginning. And the main argument for this whole excuse me, for the whole article is that um, is making young people aware that workplaces can be a very dangerous place to work. That was our thesis that we looked at. So we go scroll down. We look at some more things. We look at that already just now. So we have here is when we try and find examples of these 5 things. Stats regarding young workers in the article. Examples of injury that come from the article. Real life stories. Programs to educate youth. And expert opinions. So, see, I have some suggested answers here already. So, according to stats, our very first page, it says in 1999, 16 young people were killed on the job. That's a stat. That's something that can be proven and verified. The second one is examples of injury. We'll give 2 examples of different types of injuries. So, one we have is carpal tunnel syndrome. If workers and cash are constantly handing money, we've seen that a lot now in younger people too, from constantly being on their smartphones and texting and checking Facebook and all that stuff on their phones. Holding your phone the way you normally hold it, or your iPad or iPod, is not very good for your hands. There's also risks for burns, cuts, punctures, and bruises, depending on where you're working. The article did say that strains and sprains, which are and bruises, are some of the most common reported or commonly reported injuries in the workplace. Next, it asked for some real life stories, and so we looked at Sean Kells and David Ellis. Sean Kells was killed in an explosion as he transferred material. Do you know what it was? Liquid from one ungrounded drum to another ungrounded drum. It caused an electrical spark, which caused an explosion, which killed him. And David Ellis was the gentleman who was killed in the industrial bread maker at a factory on his second day of employment. So those are real life people that encountered tragedy at work. And stories that hopefully you and others will be able to relate to, and worried concerning the dangers that can come from working at a certain place. So, fourth one is programs to educate youth. So, what programs are out there that exist to educate our youth? Well, first we have the Young Worker Awareness Program, which is what most of this article talks about and focuses in on. And we also have the Passport to Safety, which is a program set up mostly in the Peterborough area that looks at different courses that students can take to make them more prepared to enter the workplace, and employers look for, which means it's less training that they have to provide. And then also asked for expert opinions. And so 2 people we found that gave an expert opinion were John Van Leith and Tom Sayer. And John Van Leith is provides young worker awareness program as through the professional body there in the article. And Tom Sayer is the president and coordinates the Passport to Safety program for the greater Peterborough area. So all that leads us into key question 16. So these are 4 pretty basic, straightforward questions from the article, just to make sure you actually read it and you understood what was in it. So the 4 questions are worth 3 marks each. The first one says, why is the government focused on the safety of its young workers? Number 2 says, state 3 ways in which the youth of Ontario are being educated about safety in the workplace. Number 3 says, what is the International Day of Mourning? And number 4 says, what obligations does an employer have to his or her employees regarding their safety? So I want to take a bit of a break here. I want you to work on these questions. We'll take, say, about 5 minutes or so. And I want you to try and work on these questions. We'll come back in a bit. We'll go over any questions you have about the questions or concerns, and we'll move on. So I'll talk to you in a bit. Key question 17. If you do have any questions, let me know. We're going to jump into our very last key question for this unit, and this is where we'll end for the night. We come in tomorrow. We will be starting unit number 2. We'll do a quick review of all the key questions tomorrow from unit 1, and then we'll jump right into unit number 2. So key question 18. This is going to take everything you've learned the last couple of lessons and create a brochure that could be given to young or newly hired teachers, or newly hired workers, sorry. Your brochure should outline how you could work safely on the job. So to create a brochure, follow these steps. You need to do it online on a piece of white paper for your good copy, or you can do it on the computer. I will show you both ways you can do it, and the choice will be up to you. So first, choose a piece of blank 8.5 by 11 white paper. This is the size of paper that your unit's printed on. Turn it sideways and fold it in 3 equal sections. This creates 6 panels, 3 in the front and 3 in the back. The panels will be longer than they are wide. So look like that. Ignore the letters right now. That's just, go get to that later on. You have 1, 5, 6 on the front and 2, 3, 4 in the back. So once you've figured out that, you're going to create the draft of your brochure. Now, you have to do a draft or a rough copy because I am going to be looking to see what information you put on there. And when you do your good copy, I don't want to see any eraser marks, whiteouts, anything crossed, anything like that. It should be a perfect brochure. So whether you do it on a computer or you do it on just regular white paper, you must do a rough draft, and that rough draft must be done on line paper. That we can write out all information, figure out where you're going to put your photos. Depending on what you use, you can either find them online and print them off, or you could just copy and paste them right into your brochure, depending on what you choose to use. So once you figure that out, the content you have to include in your brochure is as follows. So you have to include stuff on employees' workplace physical safety rights, employees' workplace physical rights, associations to contact for further information, instructions on what type of interview questions are appropriate in the interview and which aren't, with examples, and what are some key things, the big points that you think that young workers need to know, or newly hired workers need to know. So see, these are lettered A to E. If you go up to here, you'll see there's letters beside this. This is a suggested as to where you could put that information in terms of what panel it goes on. So the first panel will just be your title page, your title panel, nothing beyond it. You could put A, B, and E on panels 2, 3, and 4. And then D and C on 5 and 6. That's just a suggestion. You don't have to do it that way. But you want to do it that way. If you want to make sure the information is on there, especially where you can contact for further information. So, and you can want to have, you don't have to have the whole thing full of writing. You'd have photos. You have some blank space if needed. I actually recommend that. Try to have some kind of photos in there just so it breaks up all the writing. This can be done in point or bullet form. You don't have to write out paragraphs and paragraphs. You can do a couple sentences and then bullet points to highlight everything else. And last thing I want to show you is if you choose to do it on a computer, if you go to File, New, and you go to the search bar, and you just search brochures. You're going to get something like this. Now, some will be just two, just a two-panel one. Some will be three. But clicking on the example, you can get a set of it's two or three. So this is an example here. So this panel here would be your first panel. This is your headline. This would be panel 5. And this one we said would be where you could put part D, which is instruction of what types of questions are appropriate. And this one here, you have a company name. You could add stuff in here about who they can contact for more information. Then you had the inside, 3 columns inside. You could have physical safety rights on this side, workplace personal rights on this side, and then what are some key things that young workers need to know about working. So keep that in mind. That's how you can set it up if you do a computer, and they can also insert photos and clip art from here as well. Once that's done, there is a editing checklist just to make sure you have everything clear in it. So your title and subheadings attract the reader's attention should be there. So it states the topic, a clear statement questions, correct information for each topic, appropriate pictures and graphics, and finally free of spelling and grammatical errors. And it's found using rubric. It's out of 50. And it's on the last page there. It's on page 54. And so we have a bit more time, so I'll quickly want to review all of our key questions from this unit before we start Unit 2 tomorrow. So go right back to the beginning. We had 18 questions. The first 7 dealt with spelling and grammar. So key question 1 looked at prefixes, suffixes, and root words. So to choose it, you had to create new words from examples that were given. Key question 2 looks at synonyms, antonyms, and homonyms, words that are similar, different, and sound the same but mean different things. Key question 3 look at similes, metaphors, and personification. And then part 4 looked at some punctuation and capitalization exercises. That was lesson 1. Lesson 2, we did a bit more grammar. We looked at proper use of commas and tracked that with key question 5 was a practice for that. We looked at double negatives, words that have 2 negative meanings in the same sentence, and we had some practice with that. And then part C was words, key question 7 was words often confused. I had to find the words that was confused or mixed up, and then find the correct word that goes along with it. Then we look at lesson 3, which are introduction to our novel study. And so we looked at the first couple of chapters in the prologue. We had some pre-reading questions. We had to think about what you already know about the topic, and some questions based on that. Then you had to look at the little prologue entering the evil wolf and the good wolf, and do some work with that in key question 9. Key question 10 asks you to predict some information about our antagonist, whose name is Pierre Laurent. And what you already know, what you think we're going to learn about him, before you looked at some reading comprehension questions in key question 11. These are based on chapters 1 to 5, which is pages 1 to 44 of the course novel. We only read the prologue, chapters 1 and 2. The rest is up to you to read. And all those answers come right from the novel. Key question 12 Looked at your first writing activity, which is creating a really over-the-top Facebook post describing how much Tiffany loves Tony, her boyfriend. As well as doing your double-entry journal, which you hand at the end of Lesson 9 in Unit 2. Then we looked at Lesson 4. We looked at key question 14, looking at some safety issues between working in retail and in a mine or a factory, as well as looking at summaries and summarizing some different content of a website that you need to know about how to work safe in Ontario and what your rights are. Before I read looked at Lesson 5, we looked at definitions, then we read the article, which we just finished off in class on Thursday. Then we did today. We looked at key question 16, was basic questions based on that article. So then we looked at personal safety work and looking at worst concerns you could have for a job. And then lesson 18 was the brochure we just looked at. So that's where we'll end for tonight. We will start Unit 2 tomorrow. Please make sure you have Unit 2 and the novel with you when you come to class tomorrow. Other than that, thank everyone for joining me. Any questions, be sure to let me know. Other than that, I'll talk to everyone again at the exact same time tomorrow. Till then, miigwech, and bye for now.